Leona, is that us recording now?
Yep, I don't know, just hadn't seen the banner coming up, but there we go. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming along this morning. I've got apologies so far from Councillor Lafferty, who may join us, might be running a bit late. I haven't heard from Councillor Cunningham or indeed Councillor Devlin, but they may well join us at some point.
Tony, sorry, apologies from Councillor Devlin.
All right, we've got them, right. Okay. Okay, moving on then, folks. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Item 3 then on our agenda is Environment Department End of Year Performance Report. We've obviously had various other departments, so happy to hand over to Andy. I assume you're covering this one.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so this is the Environment Department End Year Performance Report for 2020-21. As you can see, it's a really comprehensive report, especially if you include the annex at the back. So I'll kind of stick to some key points. One thing I would like to say at the start is I cannot overstate the contribution made by the Environment Department on so many fronts. And this continues to be the case. So I'll be giving, well, I already have given my thanks to all my staff. And if I quickly rattle through, maybe this will help outline some of the things. Obviously, COVID has been the huge thing over that particular period. So generally, the performance has been good throughout 2021, despite COVID-19 and all the associated restrictions. My staff have adapted so quickly to really varying and unpredictable circumstances at times when it was at its zenith, just changed day to day, redeployment of staff, etc., etc. And I have to say that despite all that, the department has met or exceeded the majority of its targets, as you would see in the appendix. However, I have to be honest and say some areas of performance and planned activities were not met, and they are outlined, which was mainly as a result of COVID-19 and the restrictions. Surprisingly for me, overall, there was a 14% reduction in the total number of complaints received compared to the previous year, which is good news. Staffing shortages and the requirement for remote working did impact on the levels of customer contact and our response times to complaints, but we're working on that. I think I've mentioned before to the Cabinet, I've established a new customer relations unit that we're developing, and we're getting much better now at documenting, handling, managing complaints, and also sifting out service requests that aren't really complaints. Again, reflected in other departments' reports as well, sickness absence has improved, and we're actually well below our target. Our target was 12.3, so it was actually 9.8 for that year. The previous year was 13 days per employee, and I think what that demonstrates is the real commitment by a hell of a lot of employees to work, to be making sure that they were doing their job through conscience. Business engagement and employability, that's been a really tough year for the team because of all the COVID grants that were issued to businesses. So we diverted most of the team and also used volunteers from other areas to process all of those grants. And to give you some idea of the job involved there were nearly 3,000 grants worth just below £20 million administered to local businesses. Despite that, they continued to deliver against the economic recovery plan, which had been approved previously by the Cabinet and in response to COVID. So we have a Shop Local campaign, which many of you will have seen, which has been a great success. And we've also set up local teams involved, I think it's 4 local teams for the major town centres involving businesses, volunteers, police, multi-agency, that's helped steer them and help them through the whole COVID thing, which has gone down very, very well, I have to say. City deal, nothing major to report there. Things are being developed, and there was a recent report to Cabinet on that. Neighbourhood services, the impact of COVID on that service has been absolutely huge, and I think the response by John Buchanan, Shona, and people that have been involved there has been absolutely amazing. We've still, despite all the COVID pressures, remained at the top of the recycling league in Scotland, 4th year in a row. The fleet has been a vital component in delivering frontline services, but it's also very low visibility and low key fleet. But what we managed to do with a really good fleet management arrangement is run all of those services 24/7. So you've got your bin lorries, you've got vehicles, vans, all types of transportation, minibuses. And the team actually managed to replace 22 vehicles during the course of the year that had been planned for in the capital programme. The biggest impact, I think, has probably been on the requirement to use bubbles, where it's to protect drivers and stop the spread of COVID throughout the fleet. So without doing that, you could lose your entire fleet through social isolation in a day. That's been a huge challenge, but we've managed. We're tackling backlogs in relation to grass cutting and things like that, but I'm afraid I don't think the public really understand and respect that. I'm not saying that's their fault, I'm just reflecting on it, that many people think, well, things are back to normal. They're not back to normal. They're certainly not back to normal in the Environment Department. It's ongoing and it's every day. Roads, again, affected by delays in construction work and changes to working practices, like I've just explained to you there. Despite that, road service continued and delivered a £2.7 million programme of routine maintenance, £1.2 million programme of structural maintenance, and in my view, amazingly, it managed to deliver capital works programme of £4.9 million, which is related to the annual £3 million that the council committed over a 5-year period. And I think that's a great achievement to manage to pick that back up, a bit of slippage from the previous year, but to deliver that £4.9 million is just amazing. Continued to replace LED lanterns through the year. They're energy efficient, they're also better, etc. So we replaced 1,250 nearly throughout the year, meaning that's now 71% of our lanterns are now LED. And we continued to promote active travel. Some of it's popular, some of it's less popular. It depends upon your tastes about the cycle lanes and the cones and things like that. But also about helping create green space. Housing services have been absolutely instrumental in helping the council in areas that you wouldn't necessarily have it suspected. So it was the housing maintenance team drivers, because they were excluded from going into properties. They helped the response about the humanitarian support, including the delivery of food services. And as I said there, one of the biggest impacts at the time was the social distancing requirements and the restrictions on entering tenants' homes. That impacted on the ability to deliver the repair service. Surprisingly, again, number of homes meeting the energy efficiency standard in Scotland now rose from 79% to 93% during 2020-21. So 93% of our homes now meet that standard. I think that's that reflects really well on the service. Rent arrears is a bit more difficult, as you would expect during COVID. They have been impacted negatively. So at 9.5% is above the target of 6.5%. But we're dealing with that and trying to look at it. And, you know, we've also, because of the whole situation, taken a light touch, especially with Scottish Government guidance and regulation about evicting people, which we only ever do as a last resort anyway. So the demand from I should say that the repair service recovery is well underway, housing repair service, and we're managing to catch up. Demand from homeless households for a range of reasons has increased significantly, including a significant increase in the demand for temporary accommodation. One of the real challenges in and around housing and homelessness and temporary accommodation has been around being able to provide support through face-to-face contact. However, through different routes and different methods, the housing services managed to accommodate every single request for emergency accommodation, which I think is a fantastic thing, given the problems that people have faced. In planning, development, management, inevitably performance in some areas has been affected by the COVID-19 restrictions. They relate to things like IT limitations, which we're tackling. The inability to undertake site visits was quite important, and also I've been plagued at the same time by staff shortages and people moving on. However, it wasn't that bad, and we've managed to process quite a few applications. I have to say we're seeing, as a point of information, currently seeing a huge increase in the number of people that are submitting applications for householder extensions and garden extensions and decking and things like that. Quite unbelievable, actually. Performance in the building standards team continued to be good despite the restrictions. Property and tech services, again, they have been instrumental. I can hardly explain some of the things that they've had to do, including ensuring all the buildings were safe and compliant, including ventilation guidance on the reopening of buildings, safely closing and reopening accommodation when required, emergency services in relation to contractors, and really importantly, and a massive task was they conducted a risk assessment survey of over 3,000 rooms and in over 40 school buildings, which has put us in a really good position regarding CO2 monitoring and COVID as we move forward. So they've been absolutely instrumental. Health and safety, again, played a huge role. They took on responsibility for the procurement, the allocation, the delivery of all the PPE, protective equipment, and all the sanitising products council-wide. That was a major task to undertake, to try and acquire and store all that stuff and then distribute it because of all the COVID issues. They've carried out 108 COVID building risk assessments, which has been a huge task, but necessary in relation to allow us to operate under the COVID restrictions. They also carried out the risk assessments for the mass vaccination centre and the asymptomatic test centre and the humanitarian hub. Despite all that, they've managed to undertake significant business as usual work. Moving on, trading standards and environmental health have been absolutely key. One of the major issues here, I hardly need to highlight it to you, has been the huge work involved in setting up the mass testing and vaccination centres. They have been major issues for the council, and we've handled them extremely well in consultation and liaison with our NHS colleagues. The way that we've done that was that we united trading standards and prevention team to create a joint team to include various things. So that included, I don't know where to start, guidance to traders on the trading restrictions, compliance handling, compliance visits, being proactive and helping businesses. It's all been really, really appreciated. We have taken a very light touch and not a heavy hand in any way. And as I said, they've also been instrumental, as that team has been instrumental, in particular Shona Fraser, about setting up these mass testing and vaccination centres. So that's a quick gallop through. As I said, it's a comprehensive report. All in all, I think it's been a great response from the Environment Department, and it's still ongoing. And I just emphasise again, it's not over and it's not all back to normal. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Andy, for that report. And I think you're right to highlight the fact that the staff have done a huge amount of work above and beyond what would normally be expected, if you like. And that's credit to the staff across all the departments. But I know that in terms of Environment Department, because of the work that they're doing, it underpins everything else that everyone else then has to do. And I think that's been critical, getting us through the last year and a half, well, almost 2 years now, to have met not only and exceeded some of the targets that were laid down, despite the additional workload caused by the pandemic, is absolutely fantastic, and is a credit to our workforce, I think, across the council, because they really have went out and delivered way beyond expectations in many respects, to ensure the safety of our residents, to do as much as possible to continue to deliver the services. And I think this report highlights some of that, but I think it really does have to be highlighted that as an authority we have done a huge amount and we know that there will be issues and we still get some complaints, but I think this in many ways highlights the work that has gone on to have delivered services in such difficult circumstances. Has been a feat which really should be recognised. Happy to open it up to colleagues. Councillor Bamforth.
Thanks, Leader. Yeah, Andy, thanks for that. I mean, it is such a good report with all the things that have been working so well during the pandemic. I was particularly happy to see in paragraph 6 when you mentioned about an increase in compliments, because I think you covered that, in that not many people, more people complain than usually compliment staff, and I think that was really good to see an increase in the compliments, particularly around the cleansing staff, because I think you know, they do such a vital job, and if the pandemic has taught us anything, I think it's the kind of people that we really need to keep our infrastructure and country going, because I think we've undervalued some of them. I liked the fact that you gave a shout out in paragraphs 30 to 32 to environmental health, trade and standards and prevention teams, because people see their grass not being cut, but they don't see what's going on behind the scenes, do they? And I know, maybe it was only me, but I know almost daily I would be phoning environmental health saying, somebody's come to me about this, can they do this? And this shop wants this, or this individual wants to know about this group. They were a font of knowledge to councillors anyway during that. And if they didn't know the answer, they knew where to find the answer. So, you know, I'm glad that some of these, hopefully people will read this report and realise just how much went on in the background that they didn't see. A couple of wee questions, and you touched on it, about the sickness going from 13 to 9.8 days, which was a 24% drop. Is there something, and I'm sure you are looking at it, that we've learned? Is some people working from home? Is that improving the sickness record? Is there other factors that we can take into account? And my second question, I'll just ask two at the same time, is in paragraph 15, you mentioned the residual waste, which has been sent to for energy recovery for low carbon electricity. That mentions green hags. What happens to the residual waste at Barrhead? Does that have a similar onward processing facility?
As I understand it, the residual waste from Barrhead gets transferred to Green Hags, and that's where the collection point is. We have a technical name for it. In relation to sickness, we're still looking to explore that, and I think there is something in there, albeit anecdotal, about people that may have in the past gone off sick because they're working at home. They just work anyway. I think that's an element, but we're trying to find out a bit more about it. But I have to say that the improvement has been dramatic, and I've lost the paragraph, but in the figure I gave, I thought if anything it would go the other way.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something about learning for the future about the hybrid model of working, that we'd bear that in mind. But I'm glad you picked up, and thanks very much for both of your comments so far. I'll make sure they pass back to staff. I do agree about the behind the scenes thing, but that's just the way the world is, I'm afraid.
I know. Councillor Merritt.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks for the report, Andy. It is very comprehensive, and congratulations to the Environmental Department for their massive contribution. We've already said this umpteen times, but the overarching thing here all the time was COVID, which came in suddenly, drastically, and changed everything. And to have these results with that ongoing is phenomenal. I wanted to just touch on a couple, particularly some of the things that stand out for me. Neighbourhood services, top of the recycling for the 4th year. I mean, there are many things that stand out. I'm just going to pick a couple. That's great, as everybody now is becoming more aware of climate change, and we move into COP26. It's not just a climate emergency, it's also a nature emergency. So these are some of the most important jobs on the planet at the minute, yeah, and probably will be for years to come. So that's phenomenal to have done that. And I wanted to talk about the roads a little bit. We are second for our A-class roads across the land and 9th for our B-class roads. So it's I guess it's more towards, the residential roads where we are not as high up those tables as we are for the most used roads. So most car journeys on our roads travel on roads that are some of the top roads in the country in terms of repairs. And one other thing I wanted to ask about And you mentioned this, you mentioned partnership working across the council, how important that was across the council and with external partners. And I guess when people go out with that attitude of partnership working, it encourages more. And I always say this about partnership working, when it's not like 3 + 3, it's like 3 multiplied by 3. The impact of partnership working, collaborative in that way, works really well. And there's evidence of that. That's great. The other thing, the last thing I wanted to ask about was the shop local. And that's been a big success. The advertising and so on was terrific. Everybody was aware of that, and people did seem to be responding to it. But now with what we saw yesterday is the removal of probably several million pounds worth from local economies due to the universal credit, the cessation of the £20 uplift. That's a phenomenal impact, and I'm wondering if that's going. I'm not asking you necessarily to comment on that, if that might impact some of the shop local stuff, but just in general, what are we doing about to keep that going and to keep encouraging it? Because sometimes these things can, whether on the vein, if they're not nurtured as well.
Right. Okay. So
there's quite a lot in there. I didn't mean to just kind of vomit that out.
On the Shop Local campaign, that's something I think, regardless, that we would now continue with. It's been such a success and so welcomed by local businesses. We are, in terms of economic development, separately looking at coming back with a new economic recovery plan. And one of the things that we'll need to address is the impact of universal credit, which is, from my perspective, it's not political, it's just a fact. So we'll need to address that, what the impact on the local economy might be and what we can do as an economic development unit to counteract that and help support local businesses. On the roads issue, I do accept what you say about the C-class roads. We're second top for the A and B and 9th best in Scotland overall. But if you recall, maybe in the previous reports I put up to Cabinet, I said that now that what we would want to do is concentrate on the residential streets. But unfortunately, with the way that that indicator works, there's obviously a time lag between the repair getting done, the survey getting done, and then it been reporting back through. But I think quite soon we should be starting to see substantial improvements in the C-class roads as well, and that's the one that the residents see. They don't really see so much the through roads like Brook and Glen Road and all that sort of Eastwood names. They're more interested in their local thing. I do take on board your comment about partnership working. That's been an amazing thing for me to see as a director over the last year and a half, to see the collaboration going on between the departments within the council and also collaboration with external bodies, including our colleagues in police, fire and rescue, voluntary action. I could go on and on and on. The BIDs, the business improvement districts, local residents been involved. It's just been absolutely fantastic to see the level of collaboration. And I think I'll bear in mind that one you said, it's not 3 + 3, it's 3 × 3. So I think I've maybe hopefully covered all the points that you made.
You did, yeah. Thanks,
Thank you.
Andy. And again, congratulations to the environment.
Thank you very much. I'll pass the comments on. They'll be gratefully accepted.
Okay, thanks very much, colleagues, for those comments. I think, again, highlighting the phenomenal amount of work that has been done over the last year in the most trying of circumstances. Are we happy then, colleagues, to note the report and to again pass on our massive thanks to everyone involved across all the departments and indeed our partners for the work that has been done in getting us to the position that we are now in. And as rightly expressed, we are not home and dry yet. There is still the pandemic. We are still working through it. And thanks to our staff, we are starting to see some light. We are catching up on anything that was outstanding, and that work will continue. But huge thanks to all of our staff, particularly in the Environment Department, for underpinning all of the work that has been done across the authority. So thanks all for that.
I'll pass that on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy. Moving on, colleagues, next item on our agenda, again, another important issue for us is our annual procurement report. And I don't know, are you doing this as Debbie here to do that?
Yes,
I'm here.
Yeah.
Morning, Debbie.
Morning.
Happy to hand over to you, Debbie, to go through the report.
Thank you, Leader. The publication of an annual procurement report is a statutory obligation under the Procurement Reform Act. So today you see a report which provides a summary of regulated procurements that we've undertaken in the Council in the financial year 2021. A regulated procurement is defined as goods and services with a value of 50,000 or more and works of 2 million or more. The report also details Council performance in relation to areas including community benefits and social responsibility, and also details the pipeline of procurement activity for the following 2 financial years. The Act also requires the Council to develop and review annually a procurement strategy. So you also see the corporate procurement strategy updated for approval, with Section 4 providing details on achievements against our key procurement aims, of which you will see there have been some significant and notable successes. The publication of the annual report and review of the procurement strategy evidences the contribution that procurement makes to the ambitions of the Council and demonstrates the continuous improvement activity undertaken by the service as we work with key internal and external stakeholders to deliver best value. Cabinet are therefore asked to approve the annual procurement report for 2021 and note the update provided on the procurement strategy. And I'm happy to take any questions on that. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks very much for that, Debbie. Again, a comprehensive report, and I think a report which I don't think many people realise how important that procurement is in terms of our admiral, if you like, the toolbox that we have to tackle many of the issues and how we take forward the issues that we want to see as part of our outcome plan. It's vital in terms of our strategic processes that we utilise the procurement to ensure that any services that we do put out to tender are impacting, not only are we getting best value, but they are also delivering on many of our outcomes as part and parcel of that procurement service. So I think this is a very important document, and it's great to see in many respects some of the improvements that we have over the last year, which I think are significant, and it's great that that's been taken on board despite the difficult circumstances, as we've already discussed previously this morning. Happy to open it up, colleagues, for any comments. Councillor Bamforth.
Thanks, Leader. Just a couple of questions in page 11 or page 41, depending which number you're looking at. The processing of commingled organic green and organic food waste is down as, I think it was just over 2 million. Is that the cost to the council of the recycling of our green waste? Is that what it costs? Because I think, you know, with a lot of the complaints around charging for the garden waste, I don't think people, residents maybe realise how much it costs the council to recycle a lot of this. So I'm just wondering if that is what that cost represents. And another question, just in general about procurement, and I'm not going to start naming contractors, but I know they're not in my ward. Fortunately, there are some issues in one of the roads contracts where people are complaining it's taken too long, and albeit we absolutely know that COVID has impacted in that on all construction, but there have been a few complaints about it. I just wonder, when it comes to contracts coming to an end and then putting out procurement again, does the procurement, the people that deal with procurement look at previous experience with particular contractors and look at whether you know, issues that they've had with them and can take that into consideration? Is that one of the factors that's looked at, as well as cost and best value and things like that for the council? I don't know if that's actually a question for Andy really, because it is more of an environment question, or whether it's a procurement question, but it kind of covers both. As I say, I'm not slinging mud at any particular contractors, but I just know that there have been a lot of complaints about some of the roadworks that have been carried out, and I just wonder, for such huge contracts, whether going forward that they'll look at previous experience of certain contractors.
Thank you, Councillor. What I can tell you from procurement perspective is that when we undertake any procurement activity, the first stage is a strategy document. So we work with the department, which would be environment in this case, the example you've provided, and we do look back at lessons learned for previous tender activities. We do look at the previous contractor or incumbent contractor, and we look to any contract management information that we hold, so we have an understanding of how well or not the contract is performed. In many cases, we also do engagement events with suppliers pre the next tender activity, where we do give suppliers the opportunity to advise changes that have happened in the marketplace, concerns maybe around market conditions, and we do try and take all of that on board when we move to the next tender activity. I think you're right, we have faced challenges certainly in this financial year around market conditions, supplier availability to respond, and certainly the risk model. We've had to be very careful when we assess financially contractors responding. But from a procurement perspective, I would say yes, in terms of best value, we do try and look at as many factors as possible to ensure a fair and transparent process, and one that bidders feel that they can get through with the council. And it's not too onerous, because we obviously have heard feedback like that as well. So we try and support bidders as much as we possibly can to get them through the tender process, and obviously deliver best value as the outcome of the tender activity. In relation to your question around the value that you see represented in the report, yes, that would be the representative value of the tender activity. So that's to deliver the service. I can certainly take that offline and maybe look to provide you some more information after engaging with Environment. I'd be happy to do that if you would like me to do that.
No, it's fine. I'm just interested in seeing the value, because I think it's good for people to see just how much it actually costs the Environment Department and the council, obviously, to provide that service, because it's a large proportion of council budget, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You're on mute, Tony.
Apologies, I know it's bound to happen. It happens in every meeting. Thanks, Caroline, and thanks, Debbie. Andy, were you wanting to come in and
just
respond to that?
reiterate, thanks. I'll take the waste one offline with Debbie, and we'll come back to you, Councillor Bancroft, on that one. I can't get the report up on my screen. That's what I was trying to do. Certainly, in your comments about roads contractors, I would widen that out and say it's in relation to all contractors used by the Environment Department. We constantly monitor and review and take into account past performance.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Councillor Merrick.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks for the report, Debbie. Very comprehensive and a lot of detail in there. I just want to ask a couple of questions about fair work and the living wage. So that's great. We get best value, and we also have influence with contractors and so on as well. How is it that we do we measure the commitment to fair work? You know, we encourage these things, but do we go back and measure whether they have done it or not? I know that people have to, commit to various things, but do we measure whether they actually did commit? And the living wage, there's no legal restrictions on that. How do we go about encouraging contractors to do that?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. For both of those areas, our tender activities actually now score those areas. So we encourage suppliers to respond to those areas, and they receive a score as part of the technical evaluation for those areas. Where a bidder has advised that they do meet living wage, or they are working towards living wage, or they're prepared to negotiate with us on an uplift for certain values of staff. Likewise, where they've identified fair work practices, post-evaluation and awards, what we do as part of contract management is monitor that area. So we would be speaking to suppliers during the life of the contract to ensure that they are meeting those obligations. So that's how we're currently handling those areas.
Smashing. Thanks very much, Debbie.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mid, and thanks again, Debbie. Yeah, I think the report itself highlights how important procurement is as one of our tools. And of course, we do work as authorities. We also participate in organisations that are local authority run, like the Supplier Development Programme, which enables various businesses and suppliers to become tender ready, if you like, in order to put in place the practices that we expect them to be able to meet in relation to our outcomes. So again, I think a fantastic report. It shows the huge amount of work that goes on in delivering those services, and indeed in ensuring that we do tackle the issues of equality, of fair pay, etc. That stretch across. So it's not just us as an authority that deliver on those issues, but our expectations across the wider sector, with public and private, that we would hope to ensure that people are treated fairly. So again, a vital report. Thanks very much, Debbie, for all of the work that has gone into this and the work that has gone to look at our procurement services as a whole and to ensure that we are now in a much better position moving forward and to ensure that we continue to carry on that good work of delivering for our residents. So thank you very much for that once again. If there are no further comments, colleagues, I'll be happy to again note the report. We have commented on it and note the update on the procurement strategy as detailed in the Appendix 1 and 2. Okay, thank you, colleagues. Thanks very much for your attendance this morning, and thanks to all again for the work that has gone in to not just producing these reports, but to get the results in these reports that we very much are grateful for in terms of the delivery of our services. So thank you, everyone, and much appreciated, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.